design of homes that were similar to this, but are not that today. All manufactured homes have to be built to a HUD standard, and so the HUD standard was adopted in 1976. A new version just came out. They come out probably every decade or two. Just like our building code updates, the HUD code updates. And so these homes are built to a HUD standard, and they come with a HUD certification. And that is what makes manufactured homes manufactured homes. That is what makes them different from a modular home. Modular homes are also generally built in a factory and assembled on site, but they are not built to HUD standard, they're built to building code standards. Are you taking questions now?
I just have a question for the board. Is there going to be a vote on the mobile homes tonight?
No.
This is just an informational.
It's just informational.
Okay, we misunderstood that there was an appeal process going on and that there was going to be a vote. There's no vote.
No, there's no vote.
Thank you.
Okay. So a manufactured home is built actually inside of a facility, which if you think about when we build homes around here, having a home built without any weather issues, and it's actually built incredibly efficiently. At the end of building of a single-wide manufactured home, most of the waste all of the waste fits in a 55-gallon trash can. So they're incredibly efficiently built. There's very little waste, and they're built inside of a facility that makes sure that they are built with huge quality control. So they're built the same way every time. And they're more affordable. They are actually the most affordable home option in New Hampshire at this point. Again, these are a year old, but the average cost of owning a manufactured home in New Hampshire, so this is a home ownership building equity, is a little over $1,500 a month. The average cost of renting a 2-bedroom apartment, renting with no equity building, is $1,700 a month. This is a year old. These numbers are actually low compared to what it is today. But either way, manufactured home housing is an ownership option where you build equity and is more affordable than rental. These numbers are also a year old, but the average new home sale price is $123,000 for a manufactured home a year ago, and over $400,000 for a house. I know that the traditional home now is well over $520,000, so that's an incredible increase in 1 year. That's the average cost of purchasing a home. The average manufactured home, I don't have the exact number, but it's about $130,000 now from sales in the past year. And so what does owning a manufactured home look like? This is an example in a resident-owned community, which I will talk about in a minute, but so not a privately owned park. But here's an example from one that we've recently financed, just to give you a breakdown of what these costs look like. So this is in Guilford. It's a brand new single-wide 2-bathroom, 2-bedroom, bedrooms and bathrooms on the end. You're not sharing a wall with your neighbor, right? And so all the living space is kind of in the middle. So we have a purchase price of around $114,000, a little less. We used to have a down payment assistance program that was $10,000. We actually have a bigger one now, and if you buy an Energy Star certified home, it actually was up to $25,000. 5% down in cash. Principal and interest, that's your monthly payment of principal and interest, $778. Your real estate taxes, which I understand is something we want to talk about here, so I promise we will. Monthly basis would be $116, good Lord. Insurance around $38 a month, so your total mortgage cost is $930. Lot rent, so when you're in a resident-owned community or a private park, you have lot rent. This park is $325. That is lower. The average is around $450, but $325 a month for lot rent means the total monthly cost of owning a home in this instance is under $1,300 a month. And so it's truly an affordable form of home ownership that is not subsidized and doesn't take any necessary subsidy. So who lives in manufactured homes? Across New Hampshire, we have this data here and also some surveys we did, right after COVID, and it's your essential workers who live in these homes. We have town clerks and tax collectors, teachers, nurses from the county nursing homes. Retired police officer is president of one of our resident-owned communities in Loudon. So it's your grocery store workers, and it's, you know, what you see here. These homes are incredibly wonderful for aging and for disabled. It's really easy to add a ramp. All the new homes are built to ADA compliance, and actually the newest code requires accessible showers in all of them. And so they are a really great option for home ownership and for community, because they are in communities, and the people who live in these communities truly value each other and show up for each other and have a lot to bring to the table. So I wanted to get into appreciation. There's a false narrative that these are depreciate or are valued or treated more like a car in some way. And manufactured homes in New Hampshire are real estate. It's passed through a deed, and they are deeded real estate. They do appreciate, this is nationally, because New Hampshire is a little bit unique in how we value manufactured homes and how they are taxed and what we do with them. But they have shown over time that they absolutely appreciate, and actually in New Hampshire, they have appreciated faster than your stick-built homes in a 5-year period. And so these are real property that are valued, and then their assessed values, appraised values are going up just as our housing, and sometimes faster, which is difficult for affordability purposes, but important to know. So what is a resident-owned community? The New Hampshire Community Loan Fund was created about 41 years ago, and we created this program. Resident-owned communities is where a community, when it comes up for sale, and an owner has a bona fide offer, right? So an owner owns a manufactured home park, they put the park up for sale, they have a bona fide offer, and a purchase and sale agreement is signed. By state law in New Hampshire, they have to offer the residents to the ability to match that offer. So the residents have 60 days to organize and to decide to create a not-for-profit corporation and to put a matching offer on the table. When they put that matching offer on the table, they then do a due diligence period, right? Just like we would with anything else. Property conditions assessment, understand, you know, has there been any deferred maintenance? Is there anything, like, what are the costs of running this community, and are they ready to do that? If they choose, the Community Loan Fund will help them with organizing and governance, and then we help them with the financing to buy their park. And so they then own all the land and infrastructure underneath, and they manage it much like a little town. They have a board that they elect, they have an annual budget, they have a capital improvements program that they have to put money in every year and have a 6-year plan of improvements. And it is very much a volunteer-run, small, little organization, just like your town. And these are multi-million-dollar corporations. And so we provide a lot of training and business coaching and how to do that well, especially as turnover and volunteers, and everybody needs support to be able to do these kind of things. So that's our biggest program and what we do at the Community Loan Fund and how we know about manufactured homes. So this program, in its 40 years, we have 151 resident-owned communities across New Hampshire, over 9,000 homes permanently secured, affordable. Because you only raise the rent if you're a voting member. If you live in a cooperative, you vote when the rent has to be raised. You only do that if you have an infrastructure project or something significant you need to do. So that really does keep the rents low and stable over time. Versus if it is owned by a private entity, there are many wonderful private entities who own these, but they can raise the rent as they need to, and you don't have a say. You just own your home specifically. So in our 40-year history, just to be clear, we have not one resident-owned community has failed, has been unable to pay their bills or unable to maintain themselves. So just want to be super clear there. They're also range in size. Our smallest resident-owned community is 4 homes. That one doesn't, it's on town. They don't have road maintenance, I guess is what I'm trying to say, and they're on town water and sewer, right? Because we all know some of the most expensive things about running a community or a town is the never-ending road maintenance, right? The cost of repaving, the cost of roads, the cost of winter maintenance. And so our small communities tend to have very little infrastructure. They are more part of a town. And our largest rock is 392 homes. That's an extra, but we have a big one in Keene too, which I'll show you. in the average income, or in our income surveys that we do, 75% of households are at or below 80% of AMI. So these are providing really critical, important home ownership for people who are 80% or less of AMI across the state. And here's an example in Keene. I was trying to find some that are closer to this area of town. So if you wanted to go visit, if you haven't seen Tanglewood Cooperative yet, this is a beautiful community. It actually had a really awful storm in July. So as you can see, it's heavily treed. It's 100 acres, and it is 328 homes. 27 acres of that is open space land. So the overall density breaks down, if you take out the open space, it's about 8,000 square feet per unit. And so I'm just telling you that we're going to talk about some of those facts in a little bit. This is a beautiful community that is very stable, a mix of single and double wides. Here is another one in Loudon. And this is more traditional, being slightly less treed, manufactured home park. And what I'm bringing to your attention here is really neighborhood design and layout, which are things you can look at as part of zoning and things you can address. Community amenities and how these things come around. So this is Freedom Hill. It's 27 acres with about 109 units. So it averages out to about 10,000 square feet per unit. And then I'll just go on to show another example. I know you all wanted to talk, one of the things that you're starting the conversation around is zoning changes and zoning for manufactured housing. So the RSA that defines this is 67432, and I think this amazing board here has copies for you up front, or things you can check out. And it defines manufactured housing with 3 options. You have to allow for it in your community. You can do it on single family lots in a majority of the town area. So just instead of a stick-built home, you can allow a manufactured home on any single family lot. Or you can allow it in manufactured housing parks and subdivisions, which are defined in the RSA, but essentially the difference between a manufactured housing park and a manufactured housing subdivision is a park has individual lots with individual lot lines. Nope, sorry, I confused. A subdivision, right, just like your subdivided lot has individual lots and individual lot lines, whereas a park is collective. So the manufactured housing subdivision almost turns kind of like a condo. You own the land under your home, and then you collectively own the interior, right, the shared space. Whereas a manufactured housing park, there's one owner of all the land and infrastructure. Either that can be a privately owned or a resident-owned community, and then everybody owns their homes, either way. And then, so those are your options. You can do single family only, you can do parks and subdivisions together, or you can allow it in all 3. And you have to allow for existing park expansions based on the new law. Some examples of towns that have already updated zoning and done this. The city of Berlin did a big amendment. They had a long community conversation, and they changed to allow a bunch of different changes there. Lebanon, New Hampshire recently enacted some changes to their planned unit development, or PUD, for manufactured housing and expansion of parks. The city of Rochester, New Hampshire has a very comprehensive regulations, and Jaffrey actually has a really great regulations around land use and around manufactured housing and when it's allowed and how parks work as well. So there's some good examples you can kind of pull from. So most of these ordinances, this is North Woods in Berlin. They have a huge amount of open space you can see. A really great community, about 30-ish, 38 homes, I think. So things you can think about regulating through zoning related to manufactured housing or manufactured housing parks would be lot size, or the square footage allowed per home. The roadway standards, most of these normally you would consider reduced pavement, or reduced pavement width that keeps the speed down. It's also something less to maintain in the long run, and these are generally privately owned roads and privately maintained roads. Setbacks, is it, how close can a home be to the edge of the road, and how close can they be to each other? For example, Rochester requires homes to be at least 30 feet apart because they have manufactured home parks, not subdivisions, without specific lot lines. Or Jaffrey requires 60 feet of frontage for each home, right? So there's things like that that you can look at regulating as far as the neighborhood standards and how you want the neighborhood to look like, and those are all regulated through zoning. Parking, generally one parking spot per home is more than sufficient, especially where we live out in the boonies. There certainly are, you can have that be up to 2, but we don't really see more than that. So yeah, we usually, for the pavement, we usually see more about 22 feet of pavement and 40-foot right-of-ways as a way to keep the density together, and then the open space can be reserved for open space. Still. Some communities have adopted more stringent foundation standards. The foundations for these are regulated by building code and fire code. You can't be more strict than the NHPA, than the fire code too, just as a note there. But foundation standards are, they have to be on a slab and they have to be secured, but there are towns that have more significant foundation standards than the building code. This picture is actually really interesting. It's actually a brand new kind of manufactured home, and I forgot I put it in here. I was going to talk about it at the end. I'll show you some other pictures. So the new kind of HUD, so it's a HUD code certified manufactured home, and it's called a cross mod. And it has to go on a frost wall foundation or a full foundation. And so it sits flat on the ground. The part that you see there on the foundation and the far side, that is actually the garage. The slab is the garage and the porch. Cross mods require a roof pitch that is similar to your traditional home, and they come 80 to 90% complete, but you have to build a garage and a porch on site. So they can't get the CO until the garage and the porch on site is built. They also have very high energy efficiency standards, and they have some updated design features as well. And interestingly enough, with the brand new HUD code that came out, you're allowed to duplex them and triplex them and quadplex them. So this picture is actually a duplex one. You can see the L, so there's one home this way and one home this way, and this is in Plymouth, New Hampshire. It'll come back, I swear it will. We did this once before already. So this is actually a subdivision in Plymouth, New Hampshire, and these homes are outrageously expensive now. They started at under $300,000 a year ago. They're going for well over $400,000 a piece now, and they are absolutely beautiful and extremely energy efficient. They come net zero ready, but so these are your higher end manufactured homes, but they are manufactured homes, and they come and you're placed on site and you finish your garage and your porch and get your CO, and they can be done within 3 months once brought to the site. So it's a very efficient way to do things. Another thing just to think about if you're looking at zoning is what you do with the open space and what you allow. We work with a lot of communities to bring in resident and community-owned solar, so that these homes can't have solar on the roofs. But if you're looking at trying to stabilize your energy costs over the long run, this is a really important way as an option if a community is interested to allow them to have solar, and that solar is then net metered, and every home in this community gets a discount on their bill. And so what the community has done in some instances is you get $20 off on rent a month, or if they can't directly meter to your own bill. And now they're doing much better with on-bill credits, and so each household gets an on-bill credit to reducing their electric bill at their house by being able to do community solar. This is not resident-owned community specific. It could be done in many different ways, and so considering when you require open space as part of like an open space subdivision or conservation subdivisions, you know, what can you do with that open space and perpetuity, and thinking about the option of solar as a way to preserve open space, but also to keep communities being able to be affordable. And here's an example of a cross-mod home. These kitchens are so much nicer than mine. I've been in a bunch of them. The cross mods, again, are a high-end version of a manufactured housing. They do have the garage and the porch that has to be built on site. There's 100 million different models. I can give you a bunch of links to different ones if you're interested. Titan has one that's built in Pennsylvania and ships here, which is the ones that were done in Plymouth. And there's also, I think, a factory in New York. There's a lot more factories across the country that are really stepping it up to try and be able to better serve New England. But these are built with, these are all, regular drywall, wood cabinets. Again, way nicer than my house. These are really nice new home options that can be set up quickly and efficiently and are net zero ready. So if you put solar on the roof, they are net zero homes. So this was an overview of housing and housing options, something maybe a little different than you think of. And I am happy to try and answer questions or turn it over to your board to answer questions.
Anyone has questions, you can go with the microphone, just announce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Francis Fournier. Is that one?
Oh, no, it's not on, sorry.
Hey, my name is Francis Fournier. Is that still on?
It is on, yeah.
Okay, I live at 35 Dorset Street, okay? And as far as extending another trailer park, the existing trailer park, I can't see where that fits the purpose of our zoning ordinance. And if you were to read the zoning ordinance, we're supposed to keep the rural aspect, and we're not supposed to take away from other people's property value when we do things. And unfortunately, that's what's going on in town right now. So I'm so against extending a trailer park. But as far as putting a manufactured house on a full lot, I spent 3 terms on the planning board, so I understand how that can be done. As far as extending a trailer park in this town, you're going to have to change the purpose of our zoning ordinance before that'll even happen, in my opinion. Thank you very much.
Do you have a question for her, or is it just a statement?
That's a statement. What else could I say?
That's a statement.
You don't have questions?
I think somebody asked me a question before the meeting started that I didn't answer, that I can try and answer real quick, if that's okay, around how homes are taxed. Just to try and put that out there. So whether it's a resident-owned community or a manufactured housing park, the land and the infrastructure and the assets associated with the land are one tax bill, right? So that is taxed, and that either goes to the private property owner or the resident-owned community, and they have to pay the taxes on that asset. The individual homeowners get the tax bill for their home based on the value of their home. And so it's similar to your house, you get the land and the building together. It's 2 different line items on your tax bill. For manufactured housing, you get the bill for the home, and then the land is taxed, and it's just where that bill goes is different.
Here's a question I would have is, the theory of them that they always depreciate over time, so you lose tax money. What have you seen as a fact in different towns? Whether it's park or single lots, we're just trying to get information.
Sure.
Have you seen actual decline? Have you stayed steady? Or I know some media showed it was raising, but was that?
Yeah. So
how
they.
that affect taxes?
So when a house appreciates, just like ours, just like any other house, as it appreciates in value, its appraised value, or its assessed value, let's use the assessing terms, its assessed value also increases. And it has the same exact tax rate that any other building in town does. So if the value goes from $150,000 to $160,000 for a home, then that is the amount that is assessed at the tax rate. And these homes absolutely appreciate. They have appreciated, this slide says, at 62% over the last 5 years, and a stick-built home has appreciated at 37%. This is a problem for affordability. If we're talking about the most affordable form of home ownership, when it grows at 67% over 5 years, that means we're losing affordability. But what it also means is they are now paying 60% higher value for taxes. So they're not paying less over time. Is that helpful? And I think
we have enough low income.
So there's been some really good around the assessing question. The town of Exeter, which has a ton of manufactured home parks and single homes, they've just done a whole revaluation and really looked at how they value them, and rates went up very significantly. But they would be a good person, a good entity to reach out to around asking. I am not an assessor, and nor do I speak that language totally, but they are a great resource for thinking about that and getting real information.
Could you go to the slide where the RSA is listed? And there's like the 3 choices, or 4, I guess. So I've read the RSA briefly a couple times, and I was previously unclear on, which of the bulleted items are like ors versus
Sure.
must.
Yeah.
And I heard the first bullet through the 3rd bullet are like or. You either have to allow homes on individual lots or new homes in either parks or subdivisions.
Sure.
And then you must allow existing parks to expand. Did I get that right?
So so this is one. My sad little laser pointer here. Yeah, look at me being fancy here. Okay, so your options are on single family lots or allowing parks and subdivisions.
Okay.
Or you can do all 3 together. Right, so you can allow for on single family lots and in parks and in subdivisions. You don't have to allow parks or subdivisions if you allow it on single family lots. You don't have to allow it on single family lots if you allow it in a park or a subdivision. What option you don't have based on the law changes that went into effect in July is on expansion.
So we can't prevent expansion.
The law says you shall allow for expansion. However, what you can do with expansion is you can say it has to meet these standards. Here's the density, here's the lot standard, here's the setbacks, here's how you lay it out. You absolutely can state the conditions upon which it can be expanded, but when the state law changed, that was not an option. It wasn't before necessarily, it was worded horribly.
So I was going to say that, it doesn't really come out in, I think, this printout, but I read this as, there's a few things that are in bold, like if you go online and it changes, it's very limited. I think that specific section we're talking about here about existing park expansions, I was under the impression that that hasn't changed. Do you know if that's accurate, or?
I don't think it was written very clearly, the whole thing before.
I can read that out loud, so I won't.
You can read it, but I think, like if you look up what actually changed within the RSA, it's kind of highlighted in bold. And maybe I'm not aware, but.
Yeah, well, that's
But
why
I
we
think-
had people come and talk, because we're not sure, we thought we still had a choice.
But I believe that that bottom point specifically hasn't changed because of this, I guess this bill that was passed, is my
We didn't know,
understanding.
well, one of the things, we're not sure if it's an or. It has
That
to
one
be.
is not an or. So the or is the top 3 things, that I put 1 or 2 there. The park expansion isn't an or. What is the flexibility with the expansion is what that looks like, how you regulate that.
So,
And I am not an attorney, and you should definitely consult an attorney, but that's, that's what the changes that were made there. And the other ones were very confusing, and they're clarified.
But I do think we should
use my mic.
take a microphone. Is this
Just for
better?
people on the video, it'll be better.
Oh, cool. So, so Colin Snyder. So, I guess maybe we should just check what actually changed with this bill versus the RSA, because again, as I read through the RSA listed here and then this bill, I'm under the impression that nothing changed as it relates to parking expansions. So that may be true, but that's kind of not how I understand the actual bill itself.
Yeah, and just, I'm not disagreeing or agreeing, but if you read the analysis from the state at the top, it specifically talks about expansion separate from the other two options.
Could
Again,
you
I'm
pull up
not-
the RSA? Or do you
I
want-
don't
House
have
bill?
Wi-Fi on my computer, because I was literally just about to do that. But if you give me the Wi-Fi, I will absolutely do that, Sheriff, because
And then I do have a couple of other questions. I don't know if now's a good time or if we want to jump into those.
Do you want,
here,
that's
I can do that, yeah. I'll
I
do
guess
that while
ask the
you're
question, if she can answer while she's looking up, great, if not, maybe patient.
Sure, yeah, that sounds good. So, I guess the two questions I had, I guess kind of related to what you said. Do we have any studies on the effect of property values around a manufactured home park? Like, is it true that your property value will actually be assessed lower if you're near a park?
Yes, I've been in a place for 46 years between two trailer parks and the place ain't went crap.
Yeah, so
I
understood.
like that one for an answer.
But I guess, and I'm not disagreeing, I guess I would just want to hear kind of the statistics on it.
No, it's a lower value, definitely.
I think that there are people you could ask. I think that I could give you some names of people who do those appraisals out there in the communities. I haven't seen that to be true across the board. I do not disagree with this gentleman either, but I haven't seen that to be true across the board. But I can absolutely give you some appraisers who could give you some information about that. I haven't seen studies that show either way, to be fair. But I do know that as these appreciate in value, it would be unlikely that they would be reducing somebody else's value.
Right, and so I guess I'd recommend that the planning board maybe get some sort of study or evaluate kind of the impact, you know, if we are talking about expanding the parks.
Well, that'd be a separate question, right? Like, does you already are across the street or near a manufactured park, does the expansion change the value of the home over being next to, right? Because I too bought a park.
For sure.
And, you know, I've seen similar to the value of my, or different than the value of my home has increased substantially through, like everyone's has through COVID and all that, but am I concerned that expanding would change the value of my home? Maybe, but I guess I also, you know, was well aware when I purchased my home that I lived across the street.
As I was. No, understood, but I think it's important that this team have kind of the data as you kind of make any changes. And then maybe one other question, and then I'll sit down for a bit. That's what, sorry, I guess I stole that. So I guess my question is, do we have any studies or any information around the difference between what the town gets for taxes if a manufactured home is in a park versus if that same manufactured home is on an individual lot?
That's such a great question. I love that question.
So the board does not yet, because we're kind of just starting this process. So it's great that you guys come and ask these questions, but now we have points to ask for. So I do thank you for that. I'm sorry I don't answer, because we don't have that yet.
For sure. No, I'm just giving you guys some stuff to work on. If you need help finding it too, I could probably try to help too. Yeah, no problem. No. All right, so it sounds like we don't have that yet.
No, not
All
yet.
right, thanks.
Carol, did you want to speak to the bill, or you kind of brought it to our attention? She's our legal consultant.
Yeah, I don't have that specific language in front of me that I was looking for, but I think what the change is, the law had said, if I can get my eyes to focus, that towns have to afford reasonable opportunity for the development and expansion of manufactured housing parks. I think what the change is that they added realistic and reasonable expansion, but also expansion of existing parks, which the previous law didn't specify existing parks. So that's really the big change that's affecting, that's driving our conversation. Existing parks.
So the verbiage added was existing.
Yes, yes, and the either reasonable or realistic. So instead of just, you know, one adverb, there are now two, or whatever it is.
So the word existing. So if the park exists as of July 1, that's where you're subject to expansion. You see, I can try and make it bigger.
What defines reasonable and realistic, though?
is that not the best question ever? So there's a bunch of case law over the past, I don't even know how long, that defines that. Where you really see reasonable and realistic that's been defined in case law is around workforce housing, because that language comes from the workforce housing law. Essentially, it means on one level it has to be financially viable. So if you were to put rules in place that make it actually impossible and or not financially viable, then that would be unrealistic. That's what, I'm trying to summarize an ungodly amount of case law very simply here. But that is something that unfortunately usually gets determined in a court of law.
So financially viable, what do they use for that termination? Like annual median income, or do they have a number they use for that?
In workforce housing they do, not in this law.
Not in this law. What's the workforce housing number? Do you know that?
The number? Oh, I'll find it. RSA 674/58 through 61. But the term used here is different than the term used under manufactured housing. And so what I would say is reasonable, realistic, to me would be if you say that you have to have I'm just gonna make something completely bogus up here. So you have the density allowed is a 10,000 square foot lot with 50-foot front setbacks and 50-foot side setbacks. That means that you actually can't put a home on the lot because there isn't any land in the middle that would fit a home. That is unrealistic and unreasonable, right? So there's many ways of zoning to tweak things that even though it looks like it might be allowed, it isn't. So if a developer was to come in or somebody and say, I want to do this, but there actually is no way for me to do this because of your rules, that would be unrealistic.
Anyone else from the board have questions?
I do. It talks about having it in most land area or districts. Is there any interpretation of most but not all?
51%.
By land area or?
Yep. Generally 51% by land area. Sometimes there's been some adjudication, again, this is court law, around zoning district. For example, if you had a town that was mostly commercial industrial, which is ridiculous here, you had a very small amount of land area that was residential, you'd probably have to allow for it in all residential districts because the land area that wasn't, right? So again, just trying to find reasonableness there, but generally most means at least 51%.
So you have to allow the 51% of the
Land area.
land area in town.
Hi, Rachel O'Leary. My question is, we have an existing park that we voted down the expansion on. We haven't really spoken about that, but, and if they want to expand, and the expansion part meets all your setbacks and all that, but the existing park itself does not, is that a reason where we wouldn't allow the extension?
Oh, that's such a great question. So existing conditions as of July 1 are allowed,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
That's a great question. It's grandfathered in is the term that's used.
So current park, whatever's currently built, if you make new standards, you obviously can't change the house, so those would be what's called grandfathered. It's like a building lot. If you had a house on it, that's let's say a quarter acre, where your district says you have to be in the middle of an acre, you'd be considered grandfathered. So kind of that for the, what's already built.
Right.
If we set new standards for anything future, any new houses would have to meet those standards, whether it's lot size, coverage, setbacks, yada, yada, yada.
I have a question. My name's Kim. What benefits does this park bring to the residents of Troy? The people who don't live in the park, like, what are the pros? Like, why would we want, and we all voted we didn't want it, but why would we want it?
Are you asking me or the board?
Sure, you're showing all the benefits. I'm just curious, what are the benefits to the community to having this park in our area?
Extra fire truck, extra police department, remember, all sorts of things like that, because when you add more people to town, you have to have the amenities to go with it, or it doesn't work.
Right, but that's more resources that we.
That's right, so every time.
Oh, you're being sarcastic,
So,
sorry.
No, I'm being honest, if you put 22 more trailers in that trailer park, you're gonna add 22 more families to town, you're gonna add to the police department, you're gonna add to the fire department, you're gonna add to all the other amenities in town. Point blank, you don't have any way around it.
You're gonna add to your taxes too. We collect the
Can I-
taxes from the 22 homes.
But I wanna hear what, you're kind of like, you've got a sales pitch going here, so what's your sales
Yeah,
pitch?
so I don't know anything about this community.
Right,
I just
I'm
wanna
just-
be super clear, like literally first time in Troy,
Who
right?
brought you here and why?
I was asked to come by the board to speak generally about manufactured housing and generally about what are your options.
So the reason we asked her to come was because of the state bill, we're
Yeah,
not
she's
sure.
not an enemy, she's just here to,
We don't know what's gonna affect this
Well,
bill.
you've got a member that lives across the street from where the wetlands are cleared to increase the trailer park, a road was put in, and nothing has even been done, there's no permits, no nothing on any of it. Why? We got all the zoning ordinance in place, so that should not have happened, why did it? Answer that.
But this is for the House bill, so
Especially the guy who lives across the street that watched it all go down.
I actually enjoy the view I got, but.
Well, I can see why, but I didn't enjoy the foundation I had blown in by all the water I got.
But that's not a question for this board in reality.
But manufactured housing is an issue, and that's what this board is all about right here right now.
yes, so
Right, but the stuff you brought up is not any part of this.
Yeah, it
board,
is.
so-
They're extending the manufactured housing park in a wetland. Nobody's doing anything about it.
I have a question for the board. Jake Landry, 15 there. What kind of lot coverage are we gonna allow with something like this?
well, so the issue is we're not sure yet. So one of the reasons we had her come is, none of us are experts in manufactured houses. So for us to make a decision wouldn't be very good, so we had her come so we can learn. So that's what, she's here for us to learn. So hopefully we can tap into this knowledge. I know we had, last year, the town voted down on expansion, well, technically this year, sorry. So, as a board, it sucks we have to come forward to you guys with this, knowing you guys want to know. The state has kind of forced our hands, so we have to try to figure out how best can we move forward. We need to educate ourselves. She's here to help educate us on housing, so we can figure out, we're not manufactured housing people, so we need information. That's what she's here for.
So what needs to
Like,
go
kind
to
of
the purpose,
answer
read
it for
the
the-
purpose of our zoning ordinance, every one of the board members should read this in thorough, and then you understand what's going on.
The issue is has to change too because of the state
It
law.
will have to change if you change that. This will have to change, because it says we're not supposed to congest all our people, and all our lots. It specifically says so. Therefore, you're gonna have to change this if you change that.
Well, that's already been changed for us by the
Wow.
state. So we have to figure out.
So
how
some of
to
the
work
things
with
that I've
this.
been reading about Jaffrey's, because she had brought up Jaffrey's once, they do a nice job of some things, like for every 30 manufactured homes in a park, they need to set aside a certain amount of, what do they call it?
Open space?
Yeah, open space, things like that, right? They set a lot size requirement for each home, some of the things, but I thought that was pretty neat, right? That ensures that some space, they ensure in new parks that there's big buffers between what can be seen from the road and that sort of thing. I think that's some of the things that we do to I guess,
Did you already answer the last question?
make it smaller than
Yeah.
what.
She's gonna answer one's question, and let's make sure we use the mic too, because we do have videotaping this, and some people can't hear. So it is gonna slow it down a little bit, but let's try to use the mics.
Sorry about that.
Just generally, to try and answer your question, again, removed from not knowing Troy, this is your community and you guys know what's best in this community. When you provide affordable home ownership, you allow people to age in place, you allow options, and you allow people who work and care about this community to be able to be here. And this isn't about having manufactured housing everywhere. It's about offering options for home ownership that fit every different income level to be able to support our communities. And so that's generally what I would say. I think there's some really great new data on school children. There's a comprehensive statewide study that just came out a month ago. It's on the New Hampshire Housing website, and I know they had a presentation on it, which I haven't seen, but I do think that that would be a really good resource for some conversations you guys are absolutely going to have.
Carol?
I just want to circle back to this gentleman's question. There are standards in the Troy zoning ordinance for manufactured housing. We have never worked with them, however, because it's not been permitted. No new parks, no expansion of existing parks. So depending upon what we're going to have to do, based on the new state law, we will definitely be, I can't say revisiting because we've never visited them, looking at those standards and determining if they are appropriate for today's world or if changes would need to be made in order to be compliant with the state law.
I'm also under the understanding we don't have a permanent site plan for the existing parks. Is that something that's going to be solidified with addresses and all that stuff? Because you can't go onto the tax maps and see individual addresses. It's just the park lots. There's no roads, anything. I mean, it could change any day. I'm just questions that I'm curious about.
So those questions, I would say for that would come in probably another regular meeting or go to the office and ask, just for this meeting, because it could be a late one, center specifically on this House bill, and using permission here. I know there is an issue currently, some people feel with the park in town currently. I don't want to address that tonight because it's not the right, we're trying to handle how the state has adjusted our ordinance. Whether or not that affects him, we may go either way. We want to focus on how this House bill is going to affect our ordinances, what do we have to do moving forward. I'm not trying to take down, you guys have issues, or maybe they have issues, that's fine.
I'm all for being able to put mobile homes on private lots. I think that would be awesome. I actually was gonna do the same thing.
Well, this is the input we want, we want people's input
I
because.
think individual lots, in a standard housing lot, that would subscribe to whatever, 2 acre minimum for a rural area, I think that's a great idea.
Well, this is the input we kind of want. Unfortunately, our hands are kind of rushed to this House bill, so, I mean, I get, it sucks because last year, I know, or this year, March, everyone said no. Well, now we're telling you, that's too bad. We're with you, we understood, but as a board, there's stuff we have to do. This is one of those things.
I got a quick question. So, if you put a new house or a new manufactured house, in a mobile home park, or a manufactured home park, whatever you want to call it, $300,000 unit, whatever. At what point do you find out, is it actually still affordable if you got park rent, is that factored in? I mean, I don't know what the current park rent is for any of the trailer parks, but if you, just throwing numbers out there, if you have a $1,200 park rent a month, a $1,500 mortgage, what's considered affordable housing? Is that still under the criteria with it, or just the cost of the house, or the cost of the park as well?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So, I don't know if everybody could hear it, but his question was around like what is actually affordable? When are you hitting that high ceiling of it isn't affordable? I think, let's see, a couple ways to answer this. We are seeing across the state of New Hampshire, I promise I'll answer your question. There's a national phenomenon of REITs, or real estate tax entities, which are large real estate entities that buy huge commercial buildings. There's many of them that are going across the country and buying manufactured home parks in mass, and they're buying groups of them, and then they are raising the rent in these communities because they can. And they may or may not be improving the infrastructure with the rent increases, but they're raising rent and raising rent. And this has happened in a bunch of communities in New Hampshire. And they come in and they offer what we would normally consider over price, because they know they can jack up the rents. And so you have turnover there because you have people who can't afford their homes anymore because the lots have gone up. What we're seeing is that when lot rents rise very significantly, that there's actually a tipping point where the appraised value of the house will start to come down, because it is no longer affordable for somebody to get a mortgage for a house that's paying $1,000 a month in rent or $1,200 a month in rent for the house that's on the lot, right? And so there is that tipping point. We're seeing it nationally, but we're absolutely seeing it in New Hampshire, especially in the seacoast area, unfortunately. That's a very significant problem, but that isn't one that your zoning is going to fix. That isn't one that zoning can address. In general, lot rents, UNH is doing a study on manufactured home parks across the state, and they're doing it more looking at from a resiliency standard, like what happens in big storms and how do we help, right? A lot of these are in floodplains or whatever. I think that they mentioned recently that they saw the average lot rent somewhere around $650, but that's any given place. The state of New Hampshire defines affordable as affordable to a family of four. For home ownership, a family of four making 80% of area median income. If it's affordable to 80%. And for rental, it's at 60% of AMI for a family of three. So it depends on the family size, but the number will change. So that's in the workforce housing statute. There's nothing here that says that manufactured housing has to be affordable. But it tends to be naturally occurring affordable housing because they tend to be less cost homes, right? So they tend to be more affordable. Did I answer your question at all, or?
Kind of,
I think you do your due diligence before you put a home in the place like that, right? Like, be part of your due diligence purchasing a home in the law, you know what you're putting in and what the rent would be ahead of.
When you go to purchase a home, it's very clear what the lot rent is, what the taxes are, and what the home is valued at, and what the home's paid, what you're paying for the home. Because you don't own the land. Either you are a member in a residential community and you have an ownership stake in the land, or you are a renter on that land, and you know what the lot rent is that day, and you are hoping that the lot rent stays affordable over time.
I know the proprietor complaining up there because the rent keeps going up and it's going up again.
so once again, is it factored into the rent and the cost of
Well,
living?
it's not
I mean, this whole bill is about
Yes.
affordable housing. Is it
But
really
this bill-
affordable housing if you're jacking up the rent prices and the cost of them?
So the
brand
cost,
new most monthly home?
the cost of the home includes, a calculation of insurance, taxes, and it would include rent for a manufactured home, lot rent.
For those that are in parks.
Correct. For a rental property, it includes baseline utilities into whatever the rent is if it's not included in it. But this isn't a affordable house. To be really clear, the changes that were made here is not tied to any income, and it's not in a workforce or affordable housing bill.
It's just housing in general.
Correct. It's just part of that big housing equation that we're all trying to do something about.
Did you have questions?
Well, that's where you're losing me. If you're saying we want this affordable housing and it allows people to stay in their houses and, you know, I'm all for that, I think that's great. I've got parents in this situation. That's one thing, but if there is no way to control that, you can't guarantee that that's affordable housing. I worked at the library and processed the rental, fuel assistance, all those kind of applications for 2 years and listened to people that live in trailers in this town who couldn't afford to they had to leave. And to me, that's heartbreaking. So if you're gonna have the trailers, but you're gonna make them not affordable, then I don't understand why.
It's a great question. So if they're on their own lots, if they're on their own lots, right, if it's not, if you own, if it's on the land, just like any other home, you know exactly what that land value is, you know, you have your tax bill, it's just your tax bill and your mortgage, right? You have full control. right?
Right.
That's the conundrum of a manufactured home park. The state of New Hampshire does provide some avenues for mediation if a private park owner or anybody's aggrieved by lot rent increases that they can do, but those are not things that we get into, right? Those are separate laws and separate things. If it's a resident-owned community, then the residents, we have found nationally over time, because so about 20 years ago, we created a national branch of this, and there's over 300 resident communities across the country and growing to 50. Residents don't raise rent very often, right? And those rent costs are stabilized compared to other parks, but they have an ownership stake in the land, and that's the only way that they have that control.
So to have a resident-owned park, it has to start that way. There can't be something that's.
They can buy it. Residents can buy the park. That's what we help them with financing, right? Because the traditional bank isn't going to do that. But yes, residents can buy it because there's a law in New Hampshire that says they have 60 days to make a matching offer. But if that matching offer is very high, then it makes it very difficult for us.
That just seems unrealistic for people that are already struggling with courthouse.
So the ordinance like this, we could allow them to put on single family lots. State says you have to expand. We can allow them to put cheaper housing in. We necessarily can't control what a park owner does for rent.
Right.
There's certain things that fall out of our purview. We
So
can
kind
try
of-
to give you options to put cheaper housing in. How that plays out, whether you rent it or own the land, that's something we can't control. We can give you opportunities. How those opportunities play out, obviously going to always be most favorable.
Right, there's those opportunities where to be able to buy a 2-acre lot in Troy and control your own life.
That's something we could do. We could,
You know,
currently, we don't offer any of that.
right,
We could look into doing that.
okay.
So that, just the
To
way
put that in
it is.
perspective, play that out to the end though. So if we were to buy a 2-acre lot, what does that cost? And then put, you're probably gonna double the cost of what you're doing. And I'm not, like, to play devil's advocate on that, is the most affordable way to get into a new home like that would be inside of that park regardless of rent. Because if you put it in that 2-acre lot, you have the expense of that plus the tax on top of it. It will still be more expensive to do it that way.
Well, here's a question I don't understand, I don't know, and you may be able to answer this. You have a manufactured home in a park, and now you're able to move onto land in town. Can you move that house, or you're telling me it's stuck there, like there's no lifting it back up?
It depends on how old it is. It depends on how old it is, it depends on its condition. If it is a newer home and it can be, they have to reattach axles, it costs about between $20,000 and $30,000 to move a home. And that's one that's in good enough shape to move. Many times they are demoed and you would buy a new home to place.
It also depends on park rules, and some parks even make it so that you have to sell your trailer to the park, and then they sell it.
Okay.
So Henry?
This wasn't a response to anyone, this is a new comment, is that okay?
Yes.
I'm just chiming in because Ben wrote in to say, comment on the prices in the parks. He says the rent in the upper park is currently $400, and the rent in the lower park is $415. The state average is $450. We're below average, which makes Troy's parks affordable.
But what does that have to do with that? So,
There was a
I know, there was, so
Question
here's what I'm confused about, Kyle, or the board. There was a vote last, whenever, and everybody said no, but this meeting is because the state has made new laws that negate that vote, and now we have to hear new information so that we can then vote on it again?
Yes.
Is that what this is, that's what's happening here today?
Basically, so we voted no in March to expand the existing park. House bill says you have to allow that.
Have to allow expansion?
Expansion.
So the vote no has been thrown out and they can expand?
They can expand. What we could do is maybe set new setbacks, new parameters, try to control it more.
But we can't do that without understanding these new parameters that have come out from the state.
Yes, and that's kind of what this is for. We want to make sure we
Okay.
understood everything. Try to make sure we make an informed opinion. Best you can. I feel that's what,
Well, and then we need to decide as a town if we want to allow for new parks, or new subdivisions, or single lots, or all the above.
That's also
I think I can clarify a little. I think the board will likely try to come up with an ordinance that meets the requirement of the law, and then it will be a town meeting for you all to vote on.
So right now, if I bought a 5-acre lot that's empty and I wanted to put a mobile home or a manufactured home on it, that's not allowed?
Correct.
correct.
Oh, okay.
In our current ordinance, it's not allowed.
But you can have a trailer park, or whatever, a mobile home park, whatever this is called, you can have that and it's legal.
No.
No, in our current
Don't allow it
ordinance,
either.
it's not, but we're gonna have to somehow put on the ballot something that would likely bring us into compliance with the law
I
for-
see,
in
okay.
March.
If you wanted that mobile home on a single lot, I mean, conceivably, you could sue the town and say, you are not complying with state law, you know, and,
So
Let's
again,
not
this
do
is
this.
about what we have to change as a town
correct,
in regards to the new laws that have been put out.
right?
So we're not even talking about stopping them from expanding it. Right now, this conversation is about the new laws and how to incorporate them into our wants and wishes.
Yes.
Okay.
This is to bring us into compliance with state law, at the same time, try to put our voice into it, like how we want to look. I mean,
But also, if we put a warrant article in saying to expand the trailer park and the town votes it down again, we're still in violation of the new law for New Hampshire. So we'll have to change the law to allow the expansion of the trailer park.
So the new law is stating that we can't prevent someone from expanding
The current trailer parks.
but I can't put a mobile home on my property, but I can't
But the,
prevent someone else from putting
Depends
more on
on how
theirs.
we write that for the next voting period. That's what we'll have to decide, is when if we can allow them on individual lots, or if we'd like to continue to maybe a subdivision where everybody owns their own lot, and they're just in one space.
And we'll be drafting ordinances, but we'll have a public hearing on whatever they are, so people can come back, look at what we're
I just think
proposing.
there was confusion in what tonight was, and
Yeah.
so, that's what I was just trying to clarify, because now I understand, we're not talking about people not liking it, not wanting it, this has nothing to do with this meeting tonight.
Well, it's relevant, but there'll be another public hearing
Right.
once we've drafted ordinances.
Okay,
And then we vote in March. So nothing should happen until March.
correct.
The public hearings will be, you know,
Well,
well
no,
before
I
that
mean,
now.
no extension of the park should happen till March.
I don't wanna burst anybody's bubble, but once zoning is posted,
March is gonna be the vote.
no, it doesn't matter.
I think the
Once
issue
it's-
is that
the
this,
state law
the
says
House bill passed in July already, so as far as the state's concerned,
So
They're
the
legal.
planning board is gonna go against our purpose of our
The
ordinance.
state.
it's not the
No
planning
matter
board,
what.
it's the state.
the state has already overridden us. That's the
Can I just finish?
Yeah, could you repeat that?
Sure, so with any zoning change, it doesn't matter what it is, it's your sign ordinance or whatever, once it has been posted after the public hearing, it is law until the voters vote it down. Because it's gone through the public hearing process. That's how zoning works in New Hampshire.
But didn't someone just say we couldn't vote it down?
You can't, if you,
And
the voters can, you would be out of compliance with state law.
What are the consequences of that? The town as a whole decides that we wanna stick the middle finger up to
That's
the
why
state.
elections are so important, because the laws are being written by people that we put into power by voting for them, so we can't change it in Troy, we have to change it at that level by those politicians, so we're hamstrung, if that's the case.
To answer your question on the consequences, so a lawyer, depending on the situation, the consequences are unique depending on the situation. And your town attorney would tell you really good specific things, because I know nothing about this part. But if somebody was to submit an application, any developer, for something that was required by state law, that the town did not adopt and voted down, it would be a likely scenario for the judge to award the developer what they asked for. Not a guarantee, but you don't.
the town will still make its
So based on that, if somebody came in and bought a 100-acre lot that's in town, and they wanted to put in a subdivision, they could technically sue the town and get what they want.
It has to be something that the state has said you shall do. There's very few things that the state says you shall do. It says you shall allow existing parks to expand. It doesn't say you shall, right, you shall allow, there's very few shalls when it comes to zoning.
So that's why I think it's really important that the planning board puts together kind of some bulletproof ordinances around this, right? So maybe, right, if the town thinks that we don't want to expand it, and that's what the vote was, then we should have some restrictions around that to avoid the spirit that was against.
Probably have to take foundations instead of slabs.
Yeah.
Setbacks, density,
Correct.
things you can do.
Vegetation buffers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Anyone else have questions, comments?
I have a question for the planning board then. How long has it been in effect that you cannot put a manufactured home on a single block in town?
I think 78's the number, I'm not positive.
73. That's when we stopped allowing it?
Yep.
It's more recent.
It's when we put in the mobile home
Yeah.
I think it was 96 or 97.
I think it's even more recent than that. It's,
Could somebody go and get a variance for it? Because there is a mobile home on Old Keene Road that has not been there very long. I don't have a problem with them, I think they did a wonderful job, but I was just curious because you guys are talking about you can't do that.
yeah. So,
Somebody did it.
and I've been on the board for maybe 9 or 10 years, and during that term, I know there was a change from manufactured homes being allowed on individual lots to voters changing that to not being allowed.
Okay, so it could have been in that time period.
It
Yeah.
was last amended March 12th, 1996.
Are you talking about the manufactured housing ordinance?
Yeah.
This is just permitted use though in our zoning ordinance that this adjustment I'm talking about was made. Because at the time there was a lot of pressure and a lot of interest in saying we don't want to have manufactured homes in town anymore. Let's take away this option, and voters did, and now we're coming back.
Yeah, because it basically is on a postage stamp too. I mean, I don't know how they got it in there, but it does look nice. I'm not complaining about it, but I was just curious.
Where's that at?
On the Old Keene Road?
Anyone else? Any other questions for Sarah?
Sarah, I have one last one. You mentioned, I think Manchester's manufactured housing ordinance and Jaffrey's. I think this board will be, reading ordinances we know are recent and, welcome any other examples.
So, yeah, not Manchester, Rochester.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that's a good correction. And Berlin, I can send you a PDF copy of the presentation if that's helpful. I know.
That'd be great.
Okay, I'm happy to show that, yeah. Jaffrey, Berlin. Lebanon has a PUD, planned unit development. It's a little bit of a nuance, and yeah, those are some good ones. There's a bunch.
Anything else for Sarah?
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
So we'll still be having a planning board meeting, guys, unless Go ahead.
What is the timing? I mean, I know this is kind of new for you guys. What is the timing to have the public hearing and draft up the new ordinance and stuff? Do we have a schedule yet or not?
No,
Well, we do have deadlines, but we have to meet just to be on the ballot.
Be ready for March.
February 4th.
No.
Okay, so sometime between now and February, basically. Great. Thanks. Good luck.
whether or not that'll
sense, yeah.
All right. We'll go on the minutes, get it out of the way.
Sounds good.
And swing back to this whole bunch. Let's start with October 16th. October 6th, 2020. Can you hear us under there?
Yeah.
Any discussion?
Looks good.
Little fun? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So, those are the minutes. We do have Kim Cassidy again, who expressed interest in the open seat with the planning board. Does anyone on the board have questions for her? I'd like to make a motion for the board.
Kim's here.
There's, Kim Cassidy's
Yep.
and George.
Okay. So we have two
We
candidates.
got two contenders.
Well, I mean, you know, has room for alternates, so one need to be an alternate. Yeah, arguing that out, or first come, first served, I'd say Kim comes first, if they're on the board, we can make you an alternate. It's up to you. You guys have questions about?
Maybe we should first explain the difference between an alternate and a regular member. Would that be helpful?
Sure.
So the board has 7 full members, which can vote on any, motion or case. The alternate members considered a member, but they can't vote unless they're kind of allowed to because of an absence or a conflict of interest.
So let's
Maybe
say
a little bigger commitment.
Matt couldn't make it, you could have an alternate come and become a vote member for that.
Got it.
You can still come to every meeting.
Encourage that you come to every meeting, get to know what the board is doing, they form and help with our executive session, so that you do step in, that you're aware of what's going on.
And the term of an alternate member is still the same as a voting member. It's 3 years, but you don't see it on the ballot in an election cycle. It's appointed by the board.
How come this board isn't elected in?
The 7 full members are, but the 5 alternate members are not. Those are the appointed. So there's potentially 12 planning board members
Oh, okay.
total. if you count both.
Do you want, so Mike, you want to give like background, or?
Sure, I mean, normally someone would submit a reason why they want to be here, and maybe some qualifications around it, doesn't have to be really formal, not putting it on the spot, but, I think we all kind of did it, so it'll be a rite of passage.
No, I don't have any experience on a planning board.
I didn't either, so that's.
But I've been I've worked in the IT industry, I still do, and I have worked for multi-billion-dollar companies, and lot of project management, which I think would lend itself to this type of service. And I am interested in helping to improve Troy, and I want to be involved in making this a good community and a strong community. And I have experience working with a lot of different people, and that's why I want to do it.
Well, my background, my undergrad was in journalism, so for 10 years I covered all kinds of municipal boards. I got out of that and ended up going into another career path. However, during the pandemic, I ended up stepping back from that. I was in mental health, working as a therapist. Started working at the library of Troy just to see people again instead of all Zoom meetings. And working at the library, I met a lot of people in Troy. I heard their gripes and I heard the things they loved about this town. And I was so busy with school and raising kids and all that I never really got very involved with the town. But having worked at that library, I got to know some of the people, I saw both sides of it, and my training is in conflict resolution. So I feel like there's some conflict stuff maybe coming. And I want to see this town succeed. And I want to find solutions where both sides feel like they got at least something. And I want to see transparency. I don't think there's enough transparency. I was shocked to learn some of the things that I did learn at the library, and I realized there's two sides to every story, but I just feel like if you're gonna have a law, that everyone should have to respect that law the same. I don't think there should be one law for this guy, one law for that guy. I think we need to be transparent about what we're doing, really good with the social media and the announcing of meetings so that more people come out and are more engaged. And I'd like to see people feel happy and good about Troy instead of this tension that seems like it's happening right now. So, and I don't have any experience on the board either, just covering them, so I do know how they work. But
Thanks.
yeah.
Any more questions?
No, I would consider perhaps an amendment to the motion to appoint both as alternates. That way, I think it came up in the last time, they gain experience. If we're short on the board, someone could come in and vote, and then they could decide whether they want to run for the ballot. It's just 3 months away if you want to run for the seat.
I'm fine making an amendment to that motion.
Did you have a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion as passed forward?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Congratulations, you are now alternate members.
So with that being said, because we're missing a member, one of you guys really need to come to every meeting from here on out.
Wait, we'll say that again?
Because we're missing a member, one of you need to really come to every meeting from here on out until
Right.
Your name's put on the ballot and it's voted on. Just so
I
we
think
have a
our
full
plans
board.
both come.
Yeah, we'll come to every meeting, yes. But they're normally not held here, right? They're in the
Town hall.
Town hall
Okay.
in the conference.
And are they once a month?
Twice a month,
Twice a month, okay.
the first Wednesday of each month,
And the third.
First,
the first and third, yeah.
okay.
Unless the board decides to change it because of a conflict, we either.
And then this Elizabeth sends out a notice or something, okay.
They're posted in town hall in a couple of
Okay.
places. So she'll add you to the email link, so, what you don't have tonight obviously would be our pamphlet we got, which is the agenda, draft minutes, any information, we got correspondence, so. Correspondence this time was from SWRPC, which sometimes I have Henry read off, this is not.
Real quick.
Yep.
They'll both need to be sworn in, right?
Sworn in, so just get the paperwork, or the town clerk.
Okay.
You guys want to be sworn in before the next meeting, so you come back with alcohol.
Before, the meetings are normally 6 o'clock, right?
7.
Oh, they are 7,
Yeah.
okay. So you want us to come before 7, the next meeting?
If you would like to do it right before the meeting, selectmen can swear you in. So
you can't do it right now?
No, because I always skip work.
Oh, okay.
But we will get that.
Or, but I can also stop by, you're saying anytime, and just come in and say you be sworn in?
And our town clerk can swear.
That's Christine, right?
Yep.
Okay. I can do that.
Perfect. Mike, did you have something else, or was that?
No, that was it. I just wanted them to, I didn't want to show up.
Anything that you think is jumps out to us for the, just standard RPC hearing?
Yeah, it's kind of some interesting items were mentioned. The third entry is a funding opportunity for transportation projects. DOT's Transportation Alternatives Program is for things like, well, sidewalks is that the main project. But, you know, this is like an 80-20, 80%, 20% program, where it's 80% federal. There's a non-binding letter of interest due date coming up fast. You know, we're advertising some assistance with engineering to help communities apply for a due date in January. There's an accessory dwelling unit kind of item here. We have a regional design challenge where we're working with homeowners that are interested in what an accessory dwelling unit could look like on their property, and then developers and matching them up and kind of creating not a directory, but some design guidance that could be used around the region. And I know one of the selected homeowners is from Troy, so there's a little bit of a local connection there. Yeah, I guess those are the two I'd call out.
Okay, thank you. Is this the final draft, Carol?
Well, I think so, except for, the three of these, well, the first two have to do some changes to the solar ordinance, which we've talked about after having actually gone through an experience of, working with the ordinance. The second one is really just clerical, it's deleting these definitions that are redundant. The third is the floodplain ordinance, which we talked about, it's just updating that to be compliant with the FEMA rules. The fourth one has to do with just, the big topic of the day, and I'm thinking that we might want to talk about this a little bit. We've still got time into January to have hearings, so I think that aside from this amendment, that would be the simplest thing to make the ordinance compliant with the new state law, I do think that we should have a conversation about some other perhaps options, or also looking at the existing manufactured park ordinance and see if there might be any changes we would want to make to those standards, and making sure that expansion, as Sarah had mentioned, could make that conditional upon compliance, with the HUD rules. So those kinds of things. So I think we need at least to have. So I need to come back with some other options for you to look at.
So take an amendment 4 off the table.
Yeah.
1 through 3. Does the board think we're good enough to do a public hearing? That's our next step, correct? For those?
I'm trying to glancing back at our minutes. I remember there's one question we had, and I just remember we said, Carol would explain that, but you weren't here last time.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember which ordinance it was.
We had a discussion about hardship last time, that we didn't resolve. Was it that?
I'm not Sure. Yeah, I remember that discussion. I feel like it's something else. Okay, so that would have been November 6th minutes. I don't think we captured it in the notes necessarily exactly. I don't have my packet from last week, last meeting. Let's see, number.
I feel like it was under amendment 1, 2B, there's a question about that.
I know that, after looking at that TV there, that when discussing solar projects that we over the summer, that at one point in time, we were discussing about whether or not they should have more than one entry point.
We kind of discussed it from a safety standpoint, fire safety.
Yeah, so if that's going to be a recurring theme, then if we're amending this department anyway, after we should strike the word only from the.
Yeah, I think the consensus was that from the solar company and everyone might be in the new they just want to stay as that. And take it forever, right?
Exactly. I don't think there needs to be more than one entry, but I know that we spent quite a bit of time talking about whether there should be one, and or while we were having that discussion, when our board meeting, there was only one that we
Yeah, I think striking only will open up to, let's say, fire safety, the site plan process said, hey, you need a second one.
Yeah, would there be any detriment to striking only from that statement? And
No.
it would assure that we have one.
And also, what I was trying to get at here, and I realize now I didn't phrase it very clearly, is to try to eliminate the big tussle we got into about the access from the Class 6 park. That if the selectmen, if we had the proper language and the selectmen, if they'd gone to the selectmen first and gotten approval to access the site from the Class 6 road, it would have saved us about 1 million hours of debate about whether or not the planning board should or could have allowed that. So that's really what I was trying to clarify here, but I hadn't even thought about the one access, but that's a good point. So I need to clean this up a little bit so that becomes clear. That if they had had that in hand when they filed that application to the planning board, it would have eliminated all of that.
That state prior approval by select boards to indicate that we have four.
Just an FYI, they still have not come to the select board for a building.
I think they're preparing the necessary engineering.
Just to date, they still have not come to us.
Carol, something that I think would be helpful is just like 2 more words where it says unless approval has been granted. maybe unless approval for access has been granted, because some might, I'm concerned some people might read that as like approval of the road, or,
Or a plan, or
you know, approving the whole class, you know, and acceptance of roads was, there's a lot of confusion around that
Yes,
as well.
yes, absolutely. Yeah.
I think I remember, well, I don't want to take us away from the solar, if there's other comments on that. I think I remembered the comment I had from last time on the, does this cover the water resources? Oh no, we don't talk about water resources protection district here at all.
No.
Okay. Never mind. One thing, I don't want to throw too much more work, but there was the issue in the water resources protection district ordinance about what uses could be conditionally allowed. You know, forest, there's a lot of detail about like forestry and then single family homes, but nothing for like commercial, I think, it's fair to say.
No, I know exactly what you're getting at. In fact, I just had the same issue in another town recently with that exact same language. The conditional use permit speaks only to those roads and access ways, and just, you know, is totally silent on anything else.
Right, and there was no criteria. It says you can do other things, but there are no criteria for the other things.
Right, so I will have a look at that, I probably get something ready and try for us. Add that to the list.
Can I turn off these mics?
Yeah.
The speaker is about to run out.
is that conditional use for the wetlands, does that affect this amendment?
No,
Or is it
No.
just-
that would be like a new, it would have to be a new amendment.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we could come back to that.
Yes.
So if I understand this right, we want every facility shall have, and restrict it only, one entry point from approved class 5 or better right away, unless prior approval for access is granted by the select board.
I think that should solve a lot of problems.
The note is
Well, that went in the select board. Because when we talked about development where it goes with, last meeting. Yeah. Which is still working progress anyway, so.
And then I had a question for you all on the next one, on 4D, about the setbacks. I know that we had talked about perhaps, right now, it's a flat 100 feet from all abutting property lines. And we had some discussion about maybe changing that to be district dependent or variable, because in, you know, as we saw on Grove Street, that was a challenge. To meet that, you know, smaller lot, different districts, so, but we never really came up with anything, and I don't know if we really have time to delve into that, or
my only thought on that is, it wasn't an issue for us, it was an issue for the applicant, so if we're, I would be too worried about it.
I'd say as long as we're meeting the, I guess, the largest setback in our ordinance, right? Am I making sense?
Yeah. Yeah, pick
So
a
that we're
larger
not
of all
making it
sections.
shorter for certain, smaller for certain areas. We're not encroaching in certain districts.
So you're good with leaving it as is?
Yeah.
Okay, well then. Start that one. And then the next one, that's, some new language, just to try to, a lot of questions had come up during that process, regarding what criteria the board uses to grant waivers. So, I'm kind of uncomfortable with the hardship one, except Fitzwilliam uses this. So they do invoke a hardship option, and then they provide some criteria to be considered when they vote on that. So something for you to think about.
Yeah, last week when we were discussing, I had trouble thinking of an example of how to use those criteria. I don't know if you have, can think of a way to make that judgment based on those criteria.
Not really, and I don't know if Fitzwilliam has, actually. I could ask them if they have applied these to any of their applications. Considering, as far as I know, they only had one that went away, so I don't know if they actually used it.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, I was just trying to think in my head, like, how would I make that judgment based on those criteria? I wasn't able to really.
I mean, I think it's kind of difficult to include hardship here, away with the variance, it's very clear, the hardship criteria is spelled out for variance, so the board knows what they have to do with that. But in this situation where the board has the right to grant waivers and some thought goes into that, it's always going to be on a case-by-case basis anyway, so it's really not possible to have a definitive list of things to look at. But I had the sense from last time that the board was interested in having something in here to go by. But there's not a lot of examples out there.
Would it be inappropriate to use the hardship that's similar to the ZBA? Is that a problem?
Well, I'm not finding either in statute or any other regulations that utilize conditional use permit where a hardship is really utilized. I mean, waive and modify, yes, as long as the spirit and intent of the ordinance is upheld. But hardship I'm less comfortable with using that. I mean, I have seen a few ordinances that use that terminology, but it's a little less clear in the law that you can apply it here. It doesn't say you can't, but it also doesn't use that term.
So we have the option of removing the hardship criteria.
Yeah, because you don't have it in the first place. This would be all new language here.
Oh, but do we have the option of taking away hardship altogether and just?
Yeah, well, in fact, right, and I have proposed that in that number, F6, of taking out the hardship, just because it was, as I started to go through the literature and find a firm foundation for the support of that, I wasn't finding it.
So you're saying we could take it out of F6 and delete B altogether?
And delete 6B.
Mm-hmm.
And then just rework that as 6A.
I think if we did that, And the challenge I had with the hardship is there was no kind of calculation of the benefit to the landowner versus the harm to the abutter or the town. You know, I'm thinking there should be some weighing to the waiver that is going to be a benefit to the landowner, but it doesn't do equivalent or greater harm to others in granting that waiver. Is there a way to do that type of calculation?
I mean, possibly, but again, you know, I don't find any language anywhere that says anything other than that it shouldn't be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulations. I don't find language or in an ordinance or in the statutes that says that they have to provide that kind of a trade-off. They just need to be, you know, consistent with the spirit and intent of the regulation, which is customary language that you find everywhere. And so I'm comfortable with that language. That's, you know, tried and tested.
Yeah, I think the challenge I have is our ability to deny. I mean, if they meet it, then we pass it. But if it doesn't seem like we can take into account what's happening to the abutters there and come up with a reason for, a legitimate reason for denial, which I think in some cases there may be a circumstance where we want to deny them.
Well, I think the site plan review regulations, they give you the ability to deny without invoking this waiver. I mean, certainly you're allowed to take into consideration impact on the butters through your site plan regs.
And that's where you get our vegetation, fences.
I guess it's different than the ZBA where that balance is done in
Yes.
considering variances.
Yes, it is.
So everything would, if we go that way, everything would be based on the spirit and intent, the objective standards and requirements.
For waivers that they would be asking for, yes, except for, as I said, any provision in the site plan regulations that you would still be able to apply. And you could use that to deny a waiver. If, you know, it seems reasonable.
Any other questions?
Basic question, Carol. So this waiver section, this has to do with the conditional use permit language or the zoning ordinance language?
Because, well, the conditional use permit approval within the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
Yep.
Simple.
Yeah. I'm remembering that, you know, for some of these things, the developers are always gonna have an answer. You know, availability of site locations. Well, you know, we talked to many landowners or no, we couldn't find any, like, I feel like, no matter what we list, the board's gonna be really challenged to, like, validate
Yeah, I agree.
the hardship, because we don't know. We don't know the business. So part of me says it'd be better to not have the.
Right. And Rewild essentially went financial on all of them.
Yeah.
Which actually I found to be what any company looking for a new use is going to be.
Right, but it's basically, then it's kind of just like a pass, because most things that they're asking for would.
not sure they run financial on all of them, but the majority, yes. I think like the Doors Street, West, maybe it was a little bit more. I think that was just a setup.
Whether the reason they went was for financial or not, the conditions of what we waive are based on our ordinance. So whether they argue their reason behind why they asked, we still have to use our ordinance and our requirements to make the decision. So does it meet the spirit of stuff?
I mean, on the spirit, going to be a judgment call for board, that we can say, okay, you have an odd shaped lot or whatever, and you can't quite meet it. So we have 100-foot setback, that if there was for some reason 90-foot setback to be able to make things work, that attempt to say is not significant difference, whereas the standards, the criteria for getting a variance is very strict. I mean, but in the raises, overwhelming class deals wanted to have waivers so that we can look at realistic options where someone has something that is what we were envisioning, but some number isn't quite checking boxes. And again, we have somebody who is opposed to project whatever you're going to have conflict with someone who's not going to be thrilled with the answer usually. I mean, sometimes there can be there is we're going to be good and happy about it. I think I'd be in favor of that with the outside staff that we have in that program.
I think that Carol, just exactly what you suggest, bring it back to us, we have to review this, just move forward. Example from your suggestion, what you got. Yes, no?
Are we talking about just removing B altogether or just removing the
What Carol suggested.
definition?
What Carol suggested earlier, removing the B altogether, and other suggestions. Go with that, she has something back, a couple other things, clean it up a little bit, instead of beating the dead horse tonight.
In a rush?
Fix it, bring it back, and then have a discussion. We're going to 2 hours for the meeting, not trying to.
All right, and Carol, I will look into, yeah, I agree with you, Curtis, but I'll look into that offsetting benefit thing. I'd really feel better if we had something, but I'll look to see if there's any other examples I can find of that.
All right. So amendment 1, we'll wait for her to get back to us with the draft. So, ready to move to amendment 2? These are just being deleted, correct?
Right, because they're redundant. They had them in one place and then I forgot that, they went into another place, so they just need to be in one place.
So I don't think we had any questions on this last time, correct? No. So I think this one, I feel like this one, we're probably set up to make a public hearing on it. So get it out of the way. We have to do all these at once. Amendment 3 was just changing verbiage to make sure we're in compliance with the FEMA requirements, correct?
Yes, yeah. It's very simple, so I mean, I'll have a a copy of the completed red line so you can see what it is. But it's just, changing some words.
Just verbiage for.
Yeah.
And Carol, on that, the purpose statement, if you could add the CFR number on that, that'd be great.
So the board in agreement with amendment 2 and 3, we can make a public hearing for next meeting? That gives us enough time, correct? Notice?
Yeah, it's December 4th. And I will have new language for you then to review for 1 and 4. And then if you look at that, you can have a hearing on the 20th or into January if need be.
All right, those taken care of.
Carol, for number 4, do you want, is that like opening up the whole manufactured housing ordinance potentially? Like would you want us to like share with you things we liked from say, like the Jaffrey manufactured housing ordinance to put into ours?
Yeah, no, I'm not, I want to look at the ordinance, but I don't know if we're really going to have time this year to do a deep dive into a rewrite of the standards that are in the ordinance. And it might also be the case that the existing ordinance is sufficient for another year. I mean, it's hard to imagine that, 20 new homes are going to come in 1 year, and the existing ordinance is not going to do a good job, who knows. But at any rate, I will have to look at all of that, but I think at a minimum, we want to have a little bit of extra language in here to say that, the loss is reasonable and realistic or whatever. So you could, for example, say that expansions would be by conditional use permit instead of just, automatically allowed, so that you've got a little more. You're going to have site plan review anyway, but this gives you a little more oversight, so that if there is something in the ordinance that's not quite what you would want it to be, you could have some ability to have, additional input into that. So I think at the very least, we can get that accomplished in the next month. And then I'll have a look at the ordinance and see, what my thoughts are.
Do we or anyone on the board or anyone ever have access to that site plan so that we can see what currently exists as a site plan? Is there a site plan for the current park? Before anyone can make recommendations based on what we think Jaffrey looks like, we're gonna want what we have now and what's the.
So what we base off now is your current, can you find us a line, the current ordinance is what we've been looking at, change? So it'd be less about what the current plan looks like, it's what we want to look like in the future.
Yeah, to kind of better.
Because that plan was
The
probably
ordinance
done back in the
decides
70s,
how
so we
the
probably
park gets
don't
built.
want
It's not necessarily a site plan for the property in general, but the ordinance determines how that gets built.
So is there currently a site
There's a
plan, a
ordinance.
map or something that we can?
There is a site plan for the trailer park. It is old.
Okay.
It is old.
It's just that you've got that big road in there now, and I don't
There
know if that's
is-
been updated or.
There is a site plan that's available.
Okay.
It should be at the town hall. When they came in and asked for the 5 units to go in there, it was an old site plan which goes back to the selectmen approved the mill, the trailer park, and storage units on Route 12.
Okay.
They all 3 had old site plans. So that's what the selectmen did. We basically, we found out afterwards that the site plan can only be, was it 2 years old or so? It has to be substantial,
substantial
work done on the site. So, but there is a site plan, it is old for the trailer park.
Okay, so those aren't, they don't have to be up, is what you're saying.
They're further construction, yes, they do,
Okay.
yes. So if they're gonna expand, let's say, let's say they're gonna expand that, eight trailers and all of them, they'd have to come and make a new site plan for those eight.
Okay, got it, thank you.
So what you're, Carrie, you suggested is just trying to get that amendment for, just get us in compliance with the state for now, so that we can work on this next year to
Yes.
count it out. And that's just to prevent any legal issues one day.
Mhm.
So Carol, that change you're proposing, do you think it does bring us into compliance? Because it's not allowing parks in the majority of the land in Troy, it's just allowing the expansion of existing
Well,
parks.
thank you, Jack, for bringing that up. Yes, that's the other thing, that I do think, even though the ordinance is out of compliance and will still be out of compliance with the other piece, I still think it's going to need some discussion with the board. And in the long run, if someone came in with an application for a subdivision, for example, I mean, they certainly, well, that's been the case all along. Someone could have challenged the ordinance for as many years as it's been in place the way it is. So I think we at least start with this, and then the board needs to have a conversation about what to do about individual lots or subdivisions and I don't think we're gonna solve that one in the next month. So, it's.
So then we would be out of compliance for the next
We
year.
will continue to be out of compliance, except for the parks piece will be in compliance. So at least that piece will be compliant, but we will have to make a decision about the difference between individual lots.
But I'm not even sure that the parks part would be, as I'm reading it, and I may be reading it wrong, I'm not sure that this would get us even in compliance with 2A in the new law, which says that in manufacturing housing parks, in most but not necessarily all land area and lots zoned to permit residential uses. So it seems to me that we have to be allowing new manufacturing parks as well, not only the expansion of the existing ones, to come in compliance on that one provision.
I think the new parks was part of that or, she said. Those first three things in the slide were the or. What she said had to be done was the expansion of current. So that's part of the or, new parks. It could be a lot, a subdivision, or new park. So at least that option at least has some choices. So I guess my question is, since we're not gonna be in full compliance anyways, because we have a business next year, what if we don't do anything? Is that worse than doing something? Because we're still gonna be non-compliance. You're just making yourself half in compliance, half not. Are we digging ourselves a hole?
No, that's a good point. I would say you're not digging yourself a hole, but you raise a good point. If this little change will only bring you partially into compliance, are you any worse off by not doing anything this year and tackling the whole picture of manufactured housing? And frankly, I think that makes a lot of sense. Because then you're not doing one thing this year and then coming back next year and saying, okay, so now we've thought about it, we talked about it, and now we're gonna do these
Because
things.
my other concern is, if we do this park, we're allowing it, we're saying we're compliance, they have to use our current ordinance. Or at least we could argue, I think, if we don't adopt it, we just work on it, we can, when they come to us, we're like, we might have some more leeway, I feel, in arguing how we want this to look.
I think we're avoiding the one that's required by us, when it's simply just a change. And I don't understand what our point would be to avoid it.
Well,
What's the known change that we need to make? Like, we know, there's not a choice in it, it's not like we have to discuss it. I don't know why we kicked that.
Well, I just didn't know if it makes more sense to visit all as a whole. I get what you're saying too, but I'll make sure we're doing this efficiently, I guess, we'll try to get at.
Yeah, I guess I get that attorney also says though, that would be one more year of like liability, and it's, I don't
If
know,
only in partial compliance anyways, you're still in liability.
yeah.
But we know we have to do that, we just need,
Yeah.
you can't make a choice. You know, we feel like we might not be able to make a choice that fast on the other ones. But you never know. Risking litigation for something that we know you're gonna change in the end.
I kind of feel like we're cheating people a little bit too. Well, I think the town is, when we say in writing, you can't do this, people take that as fact, and maybe they go on their merry way, but actually, like, we're in the wrong. So, I'd feel better if we at least addressed part of the deficiencies.
Why don't you bring the draft as proposed? You know, we all think about this. And after public hearing for the other amendments, we should probably really dive into this and decide what we're gonna do. And I think so February 4th is the last date we do a public hearing. So, in December, we can really decide, are we gonna make it or not? I want to digest the information she gave us, I want to probably contact legal, them. I think we need to get a couple more pieces of the puzzle here.
You know, in mind, you know, a lot of people, there's, I believe, 3 parks in town, seem to be really focused on that.
Yeah, there's 3 total. Now, I'm not concerned about that, I'm just concerned about the
Well,
general, you know.
Trying to remember, we did the survey back in March. What did we ask about manufactured housing on that survey? Do we have any?
You talk about the master plan, so
Yes.
we can pull that up and.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think,
We talked about manufactured housing here tonight. I don't think I heard any opposition to manufactured housing on individual lots. And I think it's something that, we had a, delay heard to someone looking for variance for putting a manufactured house on a lot up on, Richmond Road. I think that if we're going to dive into this more, that I would definitely look at that too.
Was that denied, I assume?
Yes, that was denied.
What was the reason for denial?
There was nothing unique about the lot.
Nothing unique about the law. But it didn't, had nothing to do with the ordinance, it had to do with the law.
Correct. That's the argument, yeah.
Right, so homework wise, obviously, we really think about this, amendment number 4, or maybe there's a 5th, or
I would,
just it's deeper.
that's right. And kind of like we can always, if we vote by the 6th Amendment or whatever, that we can always tell a lot at the public hearing. But if we don't notice them, then we can't go have a public hearing, and then people say, oh, I would have supported this, and then, you know, time to notice and everything, and
Well, Bryce said, I think we got a lot of information tonight, both from the public and Sarah. So I guess we'll wait for amendment 4 from her, and then open discussion on this, probably back on the 4th public hearing. Do you have anything else on the agenda for tonight?
the status of the appointment for the SWRTCC, Henry, it says tonight, there's gotta be something that we can post out.
Did Steve get appointed? He was appointed, right? Yeah.
Steve did, yeah, we have an additional seat.
So we're still trying to find a second.
To see if anybody else is interested, I think we could resubmit, which we talked about, maybe Lisa Stevens, she still has interest, but I think the original conversation months ago was that we would put it out one more time to see if any more people would be interested in the position.
And Henry, you have a definition of what that role is?
Yeah, I have something that I shared with Steve and with Lisa that I'll forward on to Michael to post.
So if you want to forward it to me, I'll try to make it a post, make sure I have access.
Sure.
That way Mike's not the only one being bombarded.
That's all right, that email just came in late, but we seem to do a good job picking it up.
Yeah, but you know, you just projects that maybe you can't, so. It'd be good to get some person on there.
Social media is a great tool, and not all of our residents are on
Be a great tool, great news. Selectmen's update?
The selectmen are not meeting tomorrow. We are moved it to the 26th of Tuesday. Same time, same place, just on a different day. So next Tuesday, the reason why is Mr. Thaxton is out of town, and for the next couple of weeks coming up, and all three people there, and he's not available with the phone. Other than that, Friday, December 20th, a holiday party for the town employees and board members. You guys all got invitations sent out. You do need to RSVP though, so you can get a number by December 6th. So everyone's aware. And that's all I got.
Great. Carol, do you have anything else?
I do not.
So our next meeting will be December 4th, 2024. I think we'll be fine at the town hall, 7 o'clock. Anyone have anything else?
I would say if we are going into our discussion about manufactured housing and expansion, that it may be beneficial for us to take a look at the site plan for existing park that we have. We have it out there next meeting.
Could you say that again, Matt? I didn't hear you. What did you want to get out?
That is, we're going to continue discussion on manufactured housing and possible expansion, that we take a look at site plan that we have for existing parks.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure it's necessary, but I do think that that would help us see what previously approved, and I think that taking a look at that, being at both